Once upon a time, a group of resentful, angry men called Pharisees tried to make a deal with a guy from Bethlehem who was growing in popularity on account of his message of love, charity, and forgiveness. He advised his fans to cast off their worldly goods and to follow him. He was seen breaking bread with thieves and outcasts and hoes. He said, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothing, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." This really honked the Pharisees off. Jesus was making them look very bad indeed. They followed him everywhere, telling him he was wrong. Jesus warned everybody about these angry, resentful scandal mongers. He called them terrible people. He said that once you scratched beneath their surface, the Pharisees were the very people misappropriating the assets of the powerless and using piety to deceive. Jesus thought the Pharisees were jerks, and I don't blame him. They accused the guy of breaking the Mosaic law. They attributed his special gifts to the devil. And they demanded a sign other than miracles, because why would a miracle be good enough? They were cheesed off because Jesus walked around doling out forgiveness like Oprah doled out cars. One for you, and one for you, and one for you. The Pharisees would not be deterred, though, because Jesus was, financially speaking, a very profitable venture. Cha-ching! They trumped up charges against the poor guy, and they killed him. Screw the Nicene Creed. This was the new and improved Holy Trinity, Father, Son, and the Almighty Dollar. Verily I say unto you that the words, life, and teachings of Jesus were so charismatic that the Pharisees had to hatch a master plan to ensure people didn't actually pay attention to them. First, they made it illegal for anyone to read the holy words but themselves. Poor William Tyndale could have warned you about that. They killed him because he compiled a translation of the New Testament from the Greek in 1525, so everyone could read it. He was arrested, he spent over a year in jail, and was then strangled and burned at the stake near Brussels in 1536. Forsooth, they demanded that a priest had to read the Bible to you. But what about those pestiferous teachings of Jesus? Truly, truly, they came up with a genius plan. Use red ink, they said. Why red ink, you ask? I'll tell you. To be sure that people knew which words to avoid at all cost. Then they said it was too confusing, so they hired people who didn't know anything about the original languages, historical context, or geez, what an allegory was, to create concordances that had more pages than a Sears catalog. There they twisted the events recounted in the scriptures and interpreted them in the literal, making them impossible and nonsensical. They demanded everyone must read every word literally and obey no matter how violent. But then they created apologetics, and it turned out the Bible verses didn't actually mean what Jesus said they meant. For example, when Jesus said to love one another, the apologist fanboys explained that what Jesus really meant was that the way to love someone was to hate them and let them know that God hated them too. And so it came to pass that the Pharisees came up with a plan to lay claim to the souls of men. And why not? They were white. They hatched a grand plan to subjugate, oppress, and threaten all the other humans who had not attained their lofty status. Minorities would serve them, women would service them, children would do both. Hey, don't come for me, it's true. Foul plan complete. They looked around sheepishly at each other, sneaking unsteady glances up toward the sky, and when God did not strike them dead, they took it as a ringing endorsement. They couldn't be sure, though, so henceforth they met with the devil to beg for his assistance in order to reincarnate every generation. They spun it to the devil that they could do his work on earth, but tell the unsuspecting masses they were doing the work of God. It's worked out well for all of them. The devil handed them a piece of paper before he left, and he said, "Could you do me a favor?" They said, "Sure." He said, "Could you use the words on this paper to say you got it from God? I haven't gotten a good burn on him in a while." "And it's the least we can do," they answered. He left, and it came to pass that they looked upon the paper, and it was titled Manifest Destiny. Alas, it also came to pass that they demanded from the pulpit the support of slavery, physical violence against women and children, the lynching of black men, women, and children. They demanded that white women appreciate them for being allowed to service them as the vessels for their progeny. They insisted on the indoctrination of children to ensure their godly, wink wink, plan and perfect society will continue in perpetuity. They also demanded what I like to refer to as the doctrine of mindlessness. No learning, no questions, just blind obedience. The reincarnated Pharisees used fear and everlasting damnation in an eternal fire to spread their religion of love and acceptance. People were given 2 boxes that they could live in, man or woman. They were given 2 roles, husband, breadwinner, father, or homemaker, servant, wife and mother. And so it came to pass that most people didn't fit into those boxes. The people began to question this perfect society the old white guys had created. The old men sat on great thrones of indignation, gassy and bloated, high upon their fortress strong, untouched by the rabble whose souls they had enslaved. They prayed to the devil, to God, for more power to psychologically torture their errant followers into even more submission. They were divinely inspired, they claimed, by the new doctrine they had created. They called it the oppression of the powerless doctrine, and they chose Sunday as their day to issue forth with edicts of threats to the ingrates. That was the day the maids washed the white sheets, so they decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. It's worked out well for them. They found the best cherry pickers. Turns out they were all from Michigan, which is known for growing those tart cherries that snap back at you when you bite into them. Why cherry pickers, you ask? I'll tell you. Because cherry pickers know how to avoid the lethal pits, stems, and leaves that contain cyanide, which is poisonous and potentially lethal if ingested in large quantities. So basically, they didn't need any training. They charged these new cherry pickers to scan the holy writs and to create from whole cloth literal mythological accuracy. Their edicts came down and the word spread far and wide. They thought to head off the criticism they knew was coming by taking the air out of the naysayers' complaints and just going ahead and calling it apologetics. No one is yet to apologize, though, so that is a bit rude. But they plucked out only the best, the juiciest verses that they could use against these ungrateful people questioning their authority and refusing to be indoctrinated. Women, minorities, and children who had just stopped. They just stopped believing that religious freedom meant freedom from personal rights. These people, these damn people, started talking about human rights. The nerve of them, I tell ya. It was too much. The ingrates had to be stopped and brought back into the holy fold of the Lord, and no weapon was off the table to force them back into the open arms of love. For some odd reason, this had the opposite effect on the rabble, who devised a brilliant new name, Talibangelical. They came to believe that the only difference between an atheist and a Talibangelical was that the atheists were at least honest about not following the teachings of Jesus. The Talibangelical, they said, could no more understand the word of love spoken about Jesus than they could understand a book on theoretical physics written in Wingding. The Talibangelicals got honked off. The apologists went into hyperdrive, re-examining the Holy Writ. It was decided by the authoritarian biblical marketing office that overnight, one of the largest religions, most powerful religions in the world, would become an anxious minority needing political protection. And they found it in a drooling orange, sexually deranged foul demon. One look at this creature, and you knew what the word yuck looked like. Together, they began accusing the world of discriminating against them, of not appreciating their obvious superiority. As all of their dirty, evil deeds came to light, the depths they had gone to traumatize innocent people, to grab power, to further oppress, interfere, and subjugate the rabble, the Talibangelicals circled around the Holy Writ to protect it. Well, they only wanted to protect a few verses in it, so they ripped those pages out and they tossed the rest of the book into the fire during one of their many book burnings. It had to be done. The rest was filled with socialism, communism, love, charity, and forgiveness, and crap like that. So there were only like 3 pages left. But they had 3 very important pages, and it came to pass that they were presented with a great golden idol, which resembled the drooling orange, sexually deranged foul demon a lot. They bowed down to worship the really noxious idol, casting aside the very last vestiges of their humanity. They became wraith-like. They infected their followers by using a weapon still under investigation. Pretty soon, they hatched another grand plan. The Talibangelicals and the beast would work together. They forged an alliance with a painful pustule in human form named Michael Flynn, who was friends with a Russian tyrant named Vladimir, but his friends just call him Dobby. Trust me, you will not be able to unsee it. Thus began the greatest love story of all time. Where do I begin? The Talibangelicals, the drooling orange, sexually deranged foul demon, the painful pustule, and the Dobby guy, who was indeed very bad. Things were getting serious. No one was listening to them. People were beginning to read the red words. They met with the devil again, and he gave them an idea. Screw the Bible. Write a new one. Make yourself apostles and prophets. Make new rules. I'll help you. Everyone who does not submit will suffer. So they all formed an alliance and chose a few demented militia groups, which consisted of a bunch of unstable, shaved apes with microscopic man parts who could not find the favor of the ladies as a result of their boor's behavior. Even so, they thought themselves extra. They hatched a grand plan to take over the world. They sat around and thought about what they could do to gain popularity, what problems they could solve that would cause people to think they had answers. They thought about what message they could convey that would draw people to them. A few years later, nothing had come to them, so they decided to fall back on the only thing they remembered. They were superior. They were white. They were power. The end of this very terrible parable depends on you.